What's going on, everyone? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? It's been a while. Actually, it hasn't. It's been since yesterday. You know. Wait. Oh, Jesus. Wrong camera. Sorry, it's kind of a mess. My OBS just got screwed up. Sorry about that, everyone. So, what's going on? How's everyone doing? My name is Rodolfo Silva, and I'm a ZBrush trainer here at Maxon. And I wanted to greet you all to the second stream that we'll be doing regarding props. Number one thing before we get going is the audio okay? Is the audio okay? Can everyone hear me? Is the music too loud? Is the music too loud? No? Yes? No? Can you guys hear me? 1 2 1 2 testing 1 2 1 2. I still have some tea before you guys. Let me know if the audio is okay. Yes, that is okay. Hello, first comment. Yippee. Hello. It's fun to see the excitement in the chat. Yay, I see you yesterday. Yeah, I was here yesterday. And the whole week, actually. You just saw me yesterday. Ha! Get it? Sorry. Wrong joke. Margarita, hey. How you doing? For those of you who don't know me, that's my girlfriend right there on the chat. She watches my streams. So. All right. Shall we get going? Shall we go? Okay. So, this is not just a prop and asset modeling kind of stream. It's also a Q&A. And if you were here yesterday for our Create with Maxon series on high-end game assets, you remember that was a little question. A tiny little question. That was about IMM brushes. And I completely forgot to answer that because we're already going over the time. I just make myself not available on every other social because I get pinged here online. So if you guys remember that, there were people asking about IMM brushes, asking about Nanomesh, asking about all of that stuff. And since this is a prop related stream, making hard surface and non-hard surface props, I thought this would be very useful for us today to go over, because I was thinking of modeling little small props like books, like candles, like hooks, like torches, and then just chill with you guys because I love you guys, like just chilling, just sculpting, just answering questions, any questions you guys might have. So yeah, so to answer that question from yesterday, to create an IMM brush, I was showing stuff like this IMM model toolkit over here, right? I was showing stuff like this IMM. Oh wait, we have a IMM. Which one was I showing? I was showing something here with a zipper, and then we were using this one from our light box, right? We go into insert IMM under the brush folder. There's an IMM bricks, right? And we were using this for creating the base for our tileable textures, right? If you guys remember that was the topic of our stream yesterday. So, and people were asking, how do you make this? How do you make a library of assets that you can just reuse, right? Throughout your project, whatever project you're in. So, basically, Violet, Diana, Evergarden, hello. Okay. So basically what you do in order to create an IMM brush, you just go under your brush and there's a few buttons over here called create insert mesh, create insert multi-mesh, and create nanomesh, create multi-alpha, yada yada. These are also under the brush palette. If you go to create, there's the same buttons, right? So if you want to check that out. If you want to delete a particular mesh that's in your brush, that's also fine. And we're going to get to that as we develop this project further and further, right? And I'm going to try not to model a lot outside of the streams, a little bit maybe. I want to reserve like the small props for these streams, right? So you guys can take a real close look at those props, unless I'm answering a lot of questions and then I don't get time to advance on the project. Then I will advance on the project on my own. So to do this, let's just create another, let's go to like this cylinder 3D, and let's say I have this cylinder right over here, or let's say even that this cylinder is now this brick, right? And I'm like, I want to have some variations to this. Actually, let me go over here again. As I told you yesterday, this is reliant on that depth. So I can just do this, and now it's sitting on top of that. If I want this to be under it, then I just drag that over, and you can see it's clipping right there. So, and the gizmo is also matching like the orientation of that. So in this case, I'm going to just select this, go like that, and then just delete. Okay, need to restore my UI for some reason. Whoops, config, restore custom UI. And there it is, delete hidden. And now what I want to do is I want to reset that gizmo so it just faces the right direction. So if we have something like this brick over here, and then we want to start making variations of this. So I'm going to go with my clay buildup, and I'm going to rename this. And this is kind of important because the naming on your subtool is going to be the names of the meshes over here. So if this is brick number 1, let's say, right? And I'm going to call this brick 1. And then I'm going to duplicate this. And what I want to do is, let's say I want to, whoops. Let me just change my keyboard. Again, too many keyboard layouts. So if I want to do this, and then I want to maybe reset that gizmo. And now with solo mode, I want to go over here and I want to start making some variations. So I'm going to do something really quick and very dirty. So I'm going to do a little bit of a taper, maybe taper this out. I don't want this exponent to be the same. Maybe I want to do something like that, and then go like mallet fast 2. And I'm going to start just maybe do like a dent, like a crack over there, like that. And just do like that, right? Just start sculpting a little bit of a variation there. Or maybe we could do some project primitives or whatever. But this is just to showcase how this could be used, right? So if you're going to repeat that all over your scene, and you want to reuse a mesh, you don't need to duplicate it over and then just and then model everything from scratch every time you do that, right? You can just do that right away out the gate. So I'm going to re-Dynamesh this. Actually, you see like this is blurry, so I'm going to just drag that resolution over there, and I'm going to go onto my geometry, and under Dynamesh, I'm going to click this project button. And what this is doing is it's basically, as you Dynamesh, it then runs a projection. It then runs a reproject, right? So if I do the same Dynamesh, you can see it blurred out a little bit, but it did retain that projection detail. It blurred out a little bit because we have the blur set to 2. And now I want to set this resolution properly. And now if I do Dynamesh, I mean, we still get a little bit of a funky geometry. Maybe we want this to be more along these lines, like 280. And then that blur goes to 0 and Dynamesh, and that's much better, right? So let's say I want to add some surface noise. So I'm going to up the scale on this and then do a little bit of tweaking on this curve. Maybe do a little bigger surface noise. I want to use some noise plugins. We have the Maxon noise plugins, which are really, really cool. If I go over here and then let me just remove the mix for now. I just want to see the scale of this, so I'm going to up that strength. And this is what we're getting with a regular Luca Maxon noise. And it's not really, I showed this yesterday, it's not really triplanar, but it is in essence procedural, and it is it's faking it, right? Because you know triplanar has that weirdness when it meets, all the projections meet. This doesn't have that, because it's more like a procedural noise than anything else, right? So if we edit this, we can change to different noises. So if I'm tapping the arrow keys, I'm shifting between different max on noises. And what I need is something that has like these slashes over here. So once I have that, I'm gonna reset that curve right now and change that scale to maybe something like that, right? And now I wanna mix in that noise, but I wanna make this like the max, or maybe even invert that strength to be going in, right? And I wanna mix that in. And now what this is doing, it's basically telling ZBrush that everything's gonna have that noise except those cuts, right? So now if I change the scale of that plugin noise, you get a little bit of a different effect. Or I can multiply it over as well. So now I get like sort of this covering section. So you can play around with a lot of this and just make sure that, let me do like a minimum actually. And I'm gonna do, yeah, something like that. Something like that. Let me change this noise. This actually doesn't really work that well. There was another one here, which was the cell Voronoi. That's it. The cell Voronoi. So if I dull this down, it's basically what it is in like Designer or something. It's a cell noise that's kind of like this. So I can mix this in and then up that strength a little bit, go a little bit crazier. Was this cell Voronoi or was it Voronoi? I think it was just Voronoi. Oh, Voronoi, where is the Voronoi? There was a Voronoi, there it is. It's not a max on noise. So let's do Voronoi, and then let's go in and do that strength. Let's do something like this. And then I want to change this to be, I don't want to mix any of that. I want this to be an indent. So let me just grab that one, and grab that one. This is actually fine. This, however, I want this to be, see that? Those little cracks is just the difference between the noises, right? And now if I mix this up and make this the minimum, I'm getting that, right? I'm getting a little bit of some noise there. Maybe do some multiply even. So then I can make this noise even more like that, right? So you can get some creative like erosion happening over here, making that noise even smaller, doing something like this. And then what you can do is after you apply that noise, so if you go over to your surface palette and then click apply to mesh, and then you can press, well, not press 1, but you can basically do apply to mesh and go to stroke, repeat last. Oh no, it doesn't work like that. I need to apply the noise again. Okay, I thought it worked. Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's look at the chat. Look at the chat. Okay, hello Violet. I love the anime. Good, enjoy the anime series. I understand how you feel. Okay, so is the question about topology? You had a question about topology. So ZRemesher, right? Okay, if you want to see ZRemesher, there's something we can do about that. Let's go over, let's do like, for example, let's load up a brush, like this dragon brush, which is more organic, right? Let's load up this one. And let's get this cranium in here. And let's maybe insert a cube. I'm gonna go with this cube and I'm gonna tap that. And now we have this, this skull over here, right? So we have this skull. And let's say I am gonna divide this a bunch of times and I'm gonna apply that division. So I'm gonna delete lower actually, not apply the division. And then I'm gonna go in and maybe use some like rock noise or whatever. I don't wanna preserve that detail. So I'm gonna go like that, right? Maybe add some of that surface noise. Maybe I can pick that surface noise from over here. So I can go over here and just click copy. And then go to the other subtool. And then go paste. Now we have the same noise, right? And maybe I don't want this to be as strong. Maybe something like this. And then click OK. and then I'm gonna go and apply it a bunch of times. So let's apply this to mesh. Actually, let me just lower that strength a little bit. So let's do this. Do this again. Something like this. Okay. Let's not mix that noise. Make this stronger. Doesn't matter. Okay, there we go. Now we have that. Actually, let's do this. Just apply to mesh. Noise, apply to mesh. It's inflating a little bit. So what we can do now is actually start by using our trim dynamic with symmetry on, local symmetry without dynamic, and then just start playing around. Whoops, playing around with this, right? So I'm gonna start going maybe H polish. Just use a H polish brush. Just go over like that. Start going over. It's like, okay, let's do this. Like there's some noise that's not equal, like on both sides. I just want to have some sharp edges, right? So I can show you what I mean. So we have some of these sharp edges over here, and we're doing like a little bit of tapping Alt while doing this to make it like a perfect hard surface kind of look, sort of like that. Then we going like this, and you can see like how sharp we can go just by sculpting with H polish. The same thing goes over here. Then just keep sharpening up that edge, just to show you like how hard surface you can go using like just a simple sculptural brush. So again, tapping Alt to make this a little bit more straight. So let's say we have something like this, right? And we want to start basically remeshing. Okay, so obviously this is a little more complex shape because it has a lot of holes and the back face and all of that. So basically what you want to do, I want to showcase like a bunch of different features that you might not be aware of. A lot of people are not aware of, so I'm assuming maybe you are, but a lot of people are not aware of these features within ZRemesher. So ZRemesher is not just a one button thing that you just click it, it does this. Obviously you can get something really quick that works for whatever you're doing, especially if you're just sculpting. If you're doing a game ready asset and you're just using ZRemesher, because sometimes that's enough for like static props and stuff like that, right? They're not going to deform. There's probably some shading stuff, but that is easy to get to with ZRemesher if you know the tools, right? So for ZRemesher, if you go over ZRemesher, you have the button, which is the button ZRemesher, and ZRemesher would just give you a pretty nice result right out the gate. So if I do this is 500,000 polygons. It's not a lot, but I don't want to go too high, otherwise it can get pretty slow. We don't want to do that on stream. So it's a pretty fair result already, as you can see, and we could have just control tap that undo history and then just make sure that it matches by going over under our subtool under project and click project history. And now we've projected that asymmetry, right? Because I have symmetry turned on. If you have symmetry turned on and do a ZRemesher, it's going to do symmetrical topology, which means it's effectively kind of like mirroring. So if you have any asymmetry, you want to make sure you tag that, right? That undo history, and then just project it after you do ZRemesher. So that's a good tip if you have an asymmetrical model, but you want symmetrical topology, right? So this topology is symmetrical, as you can see, but the model itself is asymmetrical. If I divide this and keep projecting, so Control D and then project, Control D and then project, and we get that same amount of like crispiness that we had on those edges, and the topology is still symmetrical even though our model is not symmetrical, right? So this is number one, right? Understand that ZRemesher has that, and now we have a retry button. So let's say I'm back to this, right? I'm back to this, and I want to ZRemesh. So I'm going to ZRemesh by same, maybe. I'm just going to give it a little bit of time to run that ZRemesher. Waiting. There we go. So we have the same amount of topology. it is symmetrical. And of course we lost that detail that was not symmetrical. So I want to reproject. If we want to try something else, if we want to do something with, we can retry ZRemesher again. Again, it says that as you hover over with the original mesh or with the current updated settings. So if I do something like, let's say I have a poly group over here. Let's say I have a poly group like that, right? So it goes away, right? Because you're changing the nature of that topology, right? If you're sculpting, it's changing that. So it's just these settings here. If I change the adaptive size, retry, it's going to retry with that updated setting. So now we're not going to have different sized polygons. We're going to have more consistent, right? Polygons. So going over this, it's going to do the same ZRemesher, but with that updated settings. We can do keep groups if we had groups. We can go by half, just retry that with the original mesh. Let's see. There we go. So we have it. So it's looking at the retry is looking at the previous ZRemesher. It's looking at the original subtool as it was before you ran ZRemesher, and then applying this. Now, with that said, there's a lot of issues here with spiraling topology, right? This is something that I get a lot of people asking about. Like, oh, we have spiraling topology with ZRemesher. So that's a problem, and it is, I understand, especially if you're deforming like a character or something, and you want particularly good like looping geometry and not really spiraling geometry. So for that, what I would suggest is that you use, let's do the same thing, but with this mesh, like not the original one. So this would be, right, this would be the original one. So let's do that with this one. All right, let's go by half. And what you have is this thing called ZRemesher guides, which is a brush that allows you to just draw loops. So I could go over here and just close this loop. If you close it, right, you could just give it some indication. So I could tell it, for example, hey, I want this to be one edge loop around there, right? And then obviously here, it's a good idea to just close this one. And it's not like I'm making the geometry. I'm just telling ZBrush, hey, this is what you should be looking at, right? While you're doing ZRemesher. So if we take a look at this, and what we want to do then is tweak this curve strength slider. So the higher this is, it's gonna make these loops more accurate to the curves that we just drew, right? So then if I do this, you're gonna see that there's a loop going around over there. See that? It's trying to make a loop going around there, right? Same thing goes over here. It's trying to keep that topology like going around over there. And there's another thing that you can do. Let's say I want this to have much more density than like the back, for example, right? So if you click Control, use Poly Paint. Now effectively what you're doing is, whoops, not the wrong one, BPA. So I'm using Paint, the Paint mode. And effectively what I'm doing, if I go like color density of 4, and I am painting this, I'm painting this color. Like I want this to have a lot of more geometry, a lot more density here in the front, right? Whenever I paint red, or actually color density of 4, it's gonna have much more geometry. So if I want to retain these little antenna things that he has here, just paint that red. Because again, we're a sculpting application, we're an artist-driven application, so we didn't want you to select like all of the topology just to tell it, hey, I want to retain all of this topology, I want to have more density. What we wanted was you to feel like you're painting that topology in. So this is basically it. So if I want to retain more geometry over here, maybe over here as well, and then maybe if I go like maybe to 0.5, it's blue now, right? So if I do 1, for example, it's white. This is no change, right? This is just gonna look at the topology, like what topology do you want? It's gonna apply to that. So if you go to color density of 0.5, it's changing automatically. You don't change the color manually here, okay? You change it over here with the color density. So now, if I paint this blue, like on the back, right? Something like that, and like that, you're gonna see the difference. I'm not gonna paint the entire thing, but you get the point. So if I start painting like this, and now what I can say is, because this is on, you don't turn this off at all. And if you do by same, right? So if you look at the geometry, it's gonna have the same geometry, but the density is gonna be massively different. So if you do this and run a ZRemesher, and give it a bit of time. And there we go. You see how dense this is on the front? Obviously, there's some issues here that we can basically retry. It's going to run a different algorithm on it if we didn't change any settings. There we go. And you can see that this has way more density than this. You see that? This is like super low. This is medium. And this is dense. So this is useful if you're trying to retain certain aspects of the topology. So if you're doing half and then doing the same thing, it's going to start reducing that topology. So that is a little crazy. So let's use poly paint, and the curves strength, let's do maybe 50. Adaptive size down to 0. Turn off adaptive size. Let's ZRemesh this. This is new. Okay, let's do the same. Okay, this is an issue. Let me just clear this. Go to color. Fill object with white, actually. Do white. Let's go to color, fill object, turn off use poly paint. And now I want to clear those ZRemesher guides. Let me just do that again. It's giving me the same issue. Yeah, it's not. No, it will work. Yeah. Okay, so we have this, and let's do ZRemesher guides again. Okay, I want this to be an edge loop. It's a good idea to just keep it broad. Just go like that, right? And then do something like this, going around there, right? Going around there, and oops, and there, like around there, right? Doesn't matter, right? So just to showcase this. And also you can just start another loop like that. This is going to give you a spiraling loop, right? So we're going to do maybe just do a loop like that. And that's it, right? So we have some curves. So we're going to do curve strength at like 75. And we're going to use poly paint. And I'm going to go now to my paintbrush. And I want this density to be lower over here. So now I'm painting blue on this back portion, which I don't need that much geometry over here, right? Maybe this as well. And I could go maybe a little higher, but not to 1. Maybe something like that. So this is a little less dense, but not as low as like the center, because you're never going to see that center, right? You may see this section over here. So you can do this, just start painting blue everywhere, like this teal blue. And then the higher density is going to be over here on the front, like over here. And again, this is pressure sensitive. So I can do stuff like this, maybe do some taps. And then maybe here, obviously we need more geometry over here as well. And now what we need to do is go half. And it should work. There we go. So you can see that's a little more dense there. Lower polygon there. And now we're going to keep reducing this. This is a good idea for you to do this after you get to a certain point on your geometry. And then you want to just change that density, because now it's reset. You have to paint it over again. So what I would say is just do half with the curves, or just use a target poly count, right? So this is just some of the features in ZRemesher. You have like freeze groups, keep groups, all of that stuff. So So let's see. Let's take a look at. Oh, violence. Sorry, I am following the video, so I don't want to see this one. Oh no, it's fine. I like the chatter. That's good. Let me see if I missed something. Rodolfo Silva, nome de brasileiro. Nope. Nome de português. Close enough though. That's close enough. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just like you. I'm focused on videos. I'm currently 3 years younger than you. Okay. If you want, okay, cool. All right, is that clear on the ZRemesher side? Portuguese. Yep. Luso familia aqui. Hello. So, okay, let's go back into our little project and let's talk about IMMs, right? So we have this. Let's delete this skull for now because we don't need that. Or actually, we could keep this, right? And what I'm going to show you also is like if we have UVs, for example, let's just run a UV master real quick. We have some UVs. Obviously, we're not cutting the seams or doing anything crazy. But we could just, unwrap this. But let's just do some simple UVs, right? So actually, I'm going to use this rock as an example. So I'm going to go in, and what I usually do for UVs, if I want to preserve that sculptural detail, is I am just going to go in and slice it in half, especially if it's like a rock or a brick. And if I'm doing this, then I'm going to ZRemesh it with keep groups on. So I'm going to go to geometry. Under ZRemesher, there's a keep groups button. So it's going to look at that edge that we just created with 2 groups. It's going to smooth groups is kind of like a polish by groups, right? Button, and then basically what you can control, and maybe I want this to be like 0.1, that's what I usually do, by the same node adaptive size. And then as I run this, obviously I forgot about something. I forgot to tag the undo history. All right, so for booleans, okay, we're getting into the juice. We're getting into the juice. The juice. Let's go. So let me just finish this and I'll show you something really cool for a hard surface and booleans and stuff. So you see how ZRemesher works with polygroups? If we click keep groups, it's going to retain that border of the polygroups and it's going to give you a sharp edge loop that actually goes around the model. It's not a spiraling thing or anything, right? You could even go like this, for example, and like this, and just create those polygroups. Maybe I don't want those to be one polygroup. I want those to be one polygroup. And now if I ZRemesh with groups on, with the same, it's going to give me an edge loop around there as well. It's going to give me that. So now if I go by half, and also I want to go back to where we had just the mesh, control tap. And now I want to ZRemesh it by half. This is how I do UVs usually. I never do this, but you could. Doesn't matter. So let's do by half, maybe another one. So we can have like a game ready kind of brick, let's say. And again, it doesn't, what matters for games, especially for static props, is this. Your silhouette, right? How far it is from the camera and how close it is and how the silhouette is reading as the same model as this, right? Is it reading the same? If it is, then it works, right? Because you don't need crazy. You could have triangles everywhere, right? It's going to be triangulated anyway. Okay, I see your question. Let me just finish this up and I'll answer right away. So basically when you have this, I'm going to run a UV master with polygroups on. And this symmetry is not that you're going to unwrap symmetrical. It's going to lay out your shells as symmetrically as possible. So if I have this on and click unwrap, it's going to be 4 shells. 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So if I flatten this, there it is. And you can see it's not really symmetrical, but it's doing its best preserving the space. So if I do this, so maybe I want this to be a little straight, so I can just go in and rotate this around and then go to Z plugin unflatten, right? And now I'm going to Control D a couple of times, and I'm going to project history. So now we have that detail, and we have UVs. So I can go here and just click UVs and have like an alpha or something. Let me just, whoops. Let me just go over here and, oops, a daisy. Let me see if I can find some surface. Rock. Okay. And I'm looking at something like, I don't know if you have any the mega scans from your library, if you have some textures, whatever you want, or some tolerable textures that you made at ZBrush, you can also do that. So I'm going to turn off the noise plugin, and I'm just going to use this noise. I actually have to reset this. So if I go up the strength, this is just that tileable texture being repeated over and over. Now you need to make sure that this scale is set to 1, actually to 1 or 2, but you can see there's a seam there. It's starting to distort because in the UVs it's not matching like the corners. But you can do this. You can just make this maybe a little bigger, like so, and then just up the strength a little bit, right? So it's using UVs. It works with UVs. And now, if I want to create an IMM, back to what we were talking about, again, Captain Tangent over here. So if I want to create an IMM based on this, all I need to do is go to brush and click this create insert multi-mesh if you want all of your subtools to be in that IMM. If you just want to use the subtool that you have selected, it's create insert mesh. Now, it is very important that you frame your mesh in relation to your camera the way you want it to be drawn out, right? So as an example, if I have this brick over here and I want this to be drawn out like this on the surface, right? So when you draw it, it's looking at the normal of the surface, and you want the brick to be facing, this part be facing up, right? You are gonna snap that view to this side, and then you're gonna click insert mesh, new brush. And now as I draw it, oh, I have subdivisions. I have to delete the subdivisions. And now as I draw it, you can see that it is, turn off solo mode. You can see that that part is facing up. So if I go like there, you can see it's facing up over there, right? So if I wanted, for example, the side, and then I created an insert mesh, I can even append. If I click append, this is now an insert multi-mesh, which means I have both. So if I have brick 2 over here, and then I select the other one, there it is. Now, if I go over here and click create insert multi-mesh, it's going to create a mesh with all of it, right? So in this case, I don't want this to be in there. So I can just go and select that one, go to brush, and under create, I can just delete that mesh, right? And now I can just go in, create insert mesh, and append. Press OK. So now we have that, right? So this is how you create an IMM. And now, obviously, because we're in IMM, we can just create a Nanomesh out of that, like I showed you yesterday. And with this, insert a plane, for example. Right, insert a plane. So you made your variations to that brick or whatever. And now with this plane here, and let's actually just replace this with like a regular, like one of these gizmo planes. And let me just scale this up. I think this is fine, but we can increase this topology maybe to like 12. Doesn't need to be perfect. This is fine. Actually, I think that was good because I'm going to show you something. So let's say I want this to be a checker. So I can just go here and go polygroup, polyloop. Let me see if I can make this checker. Exactly. So I'm going to make this like that, like that, like that. Just start tagging this. Now I have a little bit of a checker board. It's a little different than what we had yesterday, right? So once we have this with Nanomesh, I want to insert the Nanomesh into polygroup all. And now this is going to draw one ID over there. This is our variation mesh. And this is our non-variant, right? So now that we have both over here, again, this depth is not looking right. So I'm going to go over here under my depth, and I want to make sure that this is drawn on the plane like that, right? So it's the same, it looks the same because it's not really that different, but let's imagine that it isn't. See, like there's a little variation there. And now we go into insert nanomesh, into our nanomesh settings, and we can tweak this. We can go like maybe the size of 1, maybe I want some rotation in the x-axis like that, some variation to that rotation, and a little bit of a rotation into y, just a little bit like that, right? And now if we have some variation to the height as well, let's do some height variation, that, and some length variation like that, and some width variation, but usually like that, right? And now again, this is also has rotation variation. Okay, there's some Z variation we could do a little bit of. Let's do 90 degrees over here. Actually, minus 90. Minus 90. And now once we have this, we can now change the tiling. So we can have like 2 by 2, right? So go over here, 2 by 2. And with this on, we can now start either changing that pattern. So maybe I just want the corners of each one of those, right? Or maybe I want the, I don't know, like a checker odd. So it's like an odd checker. It's a very weird checker. And we maybe we want a diagonal line. We could do various diagonal lines, and then we can add random distribution. So this is if you want random distribution to your bricks, right? Again, still with the diagonal. You can see it's still in a diagonal. So what I want to do is I want to maybe checker odd with the random distribution, and we get something like this. And now if you copy this and go to the other one, just paste it, there you go, you have your stone wall. So and now you have a library of bricks. So let's say you're modeling a bunch of different variations of bricks, or you're scanning them. If you have an iPad, there's reality scan there. Just go there, scan, bring stuff into ZBrush, sculpt on top of it, create your variations of rocks and whatever, and then shoot it over to the desktop, and you have the ability to create numerous variations of rock brick walls, right? This is already an amazing starting point, right? So this is for environment assets, obviously. What we're gonna do, if I ever shut up about Nanomesh, right, is we're gonna go in and actually I didn't need to undo. We're gonna go in and create a bunch of different smaller props, and then we can create an IMM brush out of it. We can create a Nanomesh brush out of it, etc. Right? That's crucial for the bakes. Yeah, you're talking about the UVs. Yes, you need UVs for baking, and you have the ability to, the IMM has the UVs, so this is something else, right? Most people would complain, okay, why does my mesh not have UVs? So you remember that we had UVs on this. If I go like this, and now we look at our UV map tab under here, you're gonna notice that there's no UVs. So a prerequisite for this as an IMM, because the UVs are a subtool thing. It's inherited by the subtool, right? So if this subtool doesn't have UVs and I drag a mesh here, I'm still within the same subtool. There's no UVs there. We have to have something there. So in order for me to have UVs on this brick, let's say I don't care about this skull, I just care about the brick. So I can go to UV master and just create a quick, like, I don't know, let's do AUV. Okay, UV size border, let's do this. Bump, delete UVs. AUV, doesn't matter, as long as there's something there. Now, if I drag this, and drag a bunch of them actually, you will see that if I just hide this, and let's go to select rect, and I'm gonna split this off, because I want them to be separate. So I'm gonna split hidden. The UVs here are the same as we had for the brick. So the IMM has UVs, right? If you consider, and then UV master is a good approach. Yeah, that's also a good approach. But now you have, like with that said, you have the ability now. I mean, I'm saying now, but it's been there since forever. So if I go to my original brick that I had right over here, and I'm gonna actually, let's see, do we have, yeah, we have, let me just reduce that geometry, delete higher, and I have the ability, so if I don't have any UVs, let's say I don't have any UVs here over here, so I'm gonna delete those UVs. Let me go under our UV palette, delete UVs, and this is a single polygroup. I have the ability with my ZModeler brush to go over here to a point, and instead of move, I'm gonna click crease, shortest path, right? And on the edge loops as well, I want to crease edge loop partial. And on the faces, I want nothing. And this is your ZModeler brush for cutting seams. This is your UV ZModeler brush, right? This is what you want to set in, and maybe save a copy of this brush. Because now I can just tag this and tag this one. And I'm basically doing seams, right? I'm creating creases. And if I just click from one side to the other, it's going to find the shortest path, right? And effectively, what this is doing is the same as, you know, UV master, but with more control. So let's say you don't want this UV to be looping, because again, with the polygroups, what we had before was we have a seam here, but then we also have it here. Let's say I want this to be all around. I just need one seam over here, right? So what I could do is I could crease PG to start off, right? Crease PG, and then just go one single polygroup. And now with the crease with ZModeler, I want to uncrease this one. I want to uncrease this one. Does it work? Oh, it's not uncreasing. Okay, I want to uncrease this one with the edge, right? And there we go. And now what happens is we have creases over here, and we have creases over here, and under UVs now there's a create unwrap. And I want to unwrap based on creased edges. And now this is going to be my crease. So I'm effectively cutting my UV seams based on my ZModeler. And you can see like now it's a full-on shell. It's just one shell, right? You're welcome. That's what I'm paid to do. No, that's what I love to do this streams, man. I'm so happy to be back streaming. This is what I really love to do. It's what I was doing even before I joined Maxon, right? I was a ZBrush live streamer and doing streaming on my own channel. So it's a pleasure. I love doing this. All right, so with that out of the way, regarding the Dynamesh, so let's say we have, let's go Control D, and let's delete lower. I have to get a delete lower button. Oh, there it is. Delete lower. And this is our, let's just re-Dynamesh this real quick. We have something like this, right? Okay, I need to project the details. With Dynamesh and then project, so I'm gonna go project history. This is something else, right? History recall brush. With the history recall, you can project locally. You're sculpting that point in time, you're reprojecting it on the surface with a brush, like that. So maybe you want some of the edges to be a little blurrier. Maybe you just want this middle portion to be sharper. You know, maybe something like this. Maybe something like that. Maybe something like this. And then maybe you're like working with like, I don't know, maybe I want to do like some mallet fast and just start like tapping away at these like blurred edges, which is easier to do, right? So maybe you have something like this, right? And now you go to your history recall brush again, and you're adding back all of that detail without sacrificing anything else that you're sculpting on. Because if you start sculpting and then you project history, it's going to mess up your sculpt. With the history recall brush, you could just select where you want to project, right? So this is a brush. This is the thing. It's one of Paul's favorites. So yeah, history recall is very, very powerful. So let's look at that Dynamesh, right? So if we go over here, let me just see if I deleted. Yeah, deleted that. Let's re-Dynamesh this. If I re-Dynamesh this, look at the geometry, right? I have this. Now, with the same resolution, open circle. And the open circle is going to be a little more precise. You can see that. There's more triangulation. So basically, open circle, as you can see, there's an explanation here. It will retain basically the resolution if you have a higher polynomial. So sometimes if you have, let's look at the drag. So if I drag this resolution slider, I can pick the resolution. You can see that. So I'm looking at this topology. If I have an area that's more dense, you're going to see that resolution slider changing. See that? 300 or something. So you can pick an exact density of that voxel, because this is a voxel projection, and then Dynamesh based on that. But if you open the circle and you do the same thing, in this case it's actually the same, which is weird. Okay, maybe because we don't have a lot of like sculptural detail. Let's do this. Start sculpting that detail. Let's go. Do something like that. Let's do something like this. And then I'm dragging it over. Oh, it's not. But this is supposed to retain more detail on that. So if for some reason that resolution needs to be higher, so if this is a smaller mesh, or if you have multiple like meshes on it, it's going to retain that detail. So if I do this now, it's like 2000. Actually, if we go even smaller. And if I do this, it's like maxed out. And if I open the circle, it's not going to be maxed out. So the open circle is looking at the scale of the model locally, in a sense, and being more precise about the details, right? So remember, this is a voxel projection, right? In a sense, you're looking at the canvas. That's why you get that weird triangulation, because that's where the two voxels sort of intersect on a mesh, and they create triangles, right? So you have to think of this as sort of like a grid of like in Minecraft or something, and just projecting those voxels in. And once you do that, then you think, okay, if the model is super small, those voxels are going to be too big, right? And when they project, you're going to get a lower resolution mesh. The bigger your mesh, the higher the resolution. But so there's a point when you're small that you will need a lot more resolution to retain that detail. You see that it's maxed out. But if you open the circle, it's going to look at that local scale. It's going to look at the object as its own sort of like emitter of voxels. So yeah, so it's going to work in different scales. That's what I mean. Cool. Will the iPad version be able to do that soon? I'm pretty sure you can do that already. Let me see. There we go. So let's go Dynamesh settings, Dynamesh groups, resolution. Yeah, there's an option there for you to open circle on the iPad is this little thing. I don't know if you can see on camera. I don't have an iPad plugged in this machine, but if you look over there, under you see the resolution of the Dynamesh. There's a let me see if I make this full screen. It would be helpful. So you see that resolution? Uh-oh. God damn it. Just pick this iPad up and do this. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. God damn it. There we go. So you see that resolution slider? I don't know if you can focus in on that. Oh, Jesus, it's not auto-focused. Let's just focus in. It's not focusing in. Nope. Yes. Okay. There we go. Okay, now it's working. So if I do this, can you guys see? See that resolution slider on the iPad? There's two buttons there with the 1 and 2. If you press this, this 2, press that, that's your open circle. That's mode 1, mode 2, basically. Think of it like that, in that sense. Right? There we go. Right? About the scales, about pixel density. There's the iPad version. Okay, let me see. Live. There we go. So what was the question about pixel density and scales? And click later. I will click after the stream ends. I will be able. I think. Anyways, I understand. Okay, the iPad version able to do that. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. So there, that is available already on Dynamesh on ZBrush for iPad. So yeah, no problemo, no problemo. Okay, so let's actually do some sculpting before I have to leave. This has been fun. I mean, I like this. This is supposed to be a Q&A stream, right? So that's what we're doing, and it's fun. So don't worry, keep bringing them in, keep bringing those questions in. What is this? Okay. Oh, okay. So you can see like I had some candles over here working with a ray mesh. So let me see. Okay, we have a little cage over here. You guys want me to show you how I did this cage? Like turn on live booleans. There you go. So this cage is well, that it's actually looks too stylized for my taste, but okay. So we can do a new one, or at least start. Let's see. So if I make Polymesh 3D, I'm gonna make this a sphere 3D, and I want this sphere 3D. Let me just pull up my reference real quick. So look up that reference. There it is. I think it is here. Okay, let's see. Why is it not? There it is. There you go. Okay, so we have a few references here. Now I'm going to do a very simple one just to show you what I mean, right? So we have this sphere over here. I don't need the bottom part to be round, right? I just need the top part. I could even make this like that. And one of the cool things that we can do is that we can use both a deformer or a bend curve. And in this case, not really the bend curve that we want, but we can use it. So I want to reduce this topology maybe to about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to go by 8. Like that, right? Doesn't need to be perfectly aligned with the reference again. Like we have something like this, right? Very, very simple. Very, very, very simple. So we have this, and now what I want to do in this case is I want to start playing around with the shape. So I could do, maybe I could duplicate this. Again, if I duplicate this and change this, I don't know, to like a cube, and then change it back, it's gonna remember all those settings. So it's the same shape, right? So I always start with a shape sort of like this, and I want this to be maybe a flat top, like that. And I could go maybe and do like bend curve, change that to be like top and bottom, and just do like, whoops, and then just do like the scale. We change that scale sort of like this, see that? And then just do, whoops, we'll scale like that. Or you could actually just use the deformers, right? So I could just use the deformer hard Let me think. Which one should I use? Something like that in my time ago. Oh, yeah, happy to do this one ZBrush, to be honest. Yeah. So the cage is, the cage was basically because this is sort of like a dungeon environment, right? So we're doing that. So let me go over to our deformer. And what I want to do is I want to start by maybe just start with this and move this down like that. And then as I'm adding topology, it's going to reset. That's why I didn't really want to do this. But what I can do is actually move this down to make this longer. And then go and accept this one and create another one, right? So I can go now and increase that to maybe something like this and make this a little, I don't know, let's do a crazy shape. Just masking, unmasking. I'm pressing Alt to make sure that this is like just scaling on every axis except that one, right? And now as I'm doing this, I'm gonna go in and click accept, and I can just move this manually. I can just push this down like so and scale it down like that. And then maybe have something like this. That's kind of just, you know, straight kind of thing. Go to ZModeler, and I might Z-model like a flat, maybe Q-mesh, flat island. Push this out. Just something like that, right? So this would be, maybe I want this to be a little bit thicker. So I'm gonna polygroup, polyloop. I don't want checker. So I want this one group ID. Do a polygroup like that, polygroup like that. And now I want a Q-mesh, polygroup island, and push this out with a shift key. Should be something like this. And I want to delete that edge, right? And these two could be maybe pushed out and pushed like that. And then this could be deleted or maybe changed to something like that, right? Just following a little bit of a reference in a sense. So what I usually do for this is I go to dynamic mode, and with my dynamic subdivisions, I'm gonna add a Q grid. So if I add a Q grid, no smooth subdivisions, you're gonna start having, like, if you up this coverage, this is what you're getting, right? You're gonna start getting that gap in between the polygons, every single polygon, right? And then you can use this to your advantage. So you could, this could be your grid, right? So this could be something that you could use on, and again, it's non-destructive, so I can still move this around, etc. I could just do this, for example, right? And have this be sort of like, I don't know, it's a weird one at the moment, but let's do that and scale this out, maybe to something like that, and then like this, and then have maybe, yeah, maybe like that, right? Something like this, right? And then if I press this and I go in and let me think. If we do a chamfer, it rounds it out. I could do like no bevel, just chamfer, or nothing. If you do nothing, it's just gonna add those edge loops, which could be also what you want. But I want a chamfer. Actually, I want a bevel, not a chamfer. So like a bevel, right? And if you have 0, there's nothing. If you have 1, the more you add, the more edging you're gonna add to that, right? So I want one Q grid, flat, right? And I want this to be, because it's like the same distance, right? So I want to apply this. And now I could either paint this, like paint this topology to be a different polygroup. So I could be like this, and then just delete those edges. Or I could do an inset, but I want this to be retained, like that sculptability with that, right? So I want to do this. I could do with symmetry. I could go transform, radial symmetry Y, do like 8 exactly. Just paint this. Oh, it's non-symmetrical. Okay. Do I have 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, okay. There's 9. All right, my bad. So I'm gonna go 9. And there we go. And there we go. And there we go. And actually, whoops. That, and that. Right? And same thing goes over here. So I could just, in this case, I could just flat island, polygroup flat island, sorry. And just polygroup that, right? And this is what I'm getting, right? I'm just gonna go in and have that polygroup be deleted throughout. This is a little, got some weirdness happening over here. But again, it's fine. We could just add one of these on the bottom. But yeah, so same thing goes over here. Polygon flat island. Just select those and now delete. Now I don't want this because this is still weird. And now I want to shrink this by 1 and delete. And now if I mask these and go with my gizmo, center that, control drag. Oh, actually, I need that. Control drag. It's gonna give me, oh, actually it doesn't work. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna create that later. So now we have this. We have this little shell. Actually, don't need that as well. We have this shell. I'm gonna add dynamic thickness to this, like flat thickness. I'm gonna do a couple of flat subdivisions. Actually, no, just thickness. Do not post subdivisions. This is what we're getting. Now I can go increase, right? Crease that, or crease all. But the problem is that we have weird topology. Like we have this weird in the middle. You just delete that, delete. This is non-symmetrical still. Okay. Doesn't matter. Just go like this, like that. And now we have this weird, well, actually we have Q grid. We don't want Q grid. We want thickness though. We want some smoothness. And that thickness, we want it to be offset outside and just push it a little bit. Post subdivisions, right? Then we get something along these lines. So let me uncrease all, increase by angle. And we could just maybe do some crazy designs over here. Something like this. Actually, in this case, I want to crease all. So this would be like the base, right? For my cage. Right? No, QGrid is not a replacement for creasing. QGrid is just so I can get that extra geometry, right? You could crease it and bevel. It's still non-destructive. It's just this would give you a preview. It depends, right? There's just so many ways you could do it that it's kind of redonkulous. Things you could do. You could also just do one strip like that and then just do the rings around it. So I'm overcomplicating actually, to be honest. So let me just duplicate this out over there, rotate it back and change that to that sphere again, right? Like this. And let's do it your way basically. So what you're doing is, what you're saying is you want to do something more along these lines, where you would go in like that. And no, this is fine. So we have something like this for the top, and now we can actually go in and do that, right? Because we don't need that top section. And now I want to split this out. So I'm going to go to masking my little custom menu. So go to subtool, split, and go and split unmasked points. And now this is going to be what we're working with, right? So we still have this ability. Change this. I actually only want like a couple of them. Or I could even, like for creasing, to your point, right? I could go ZModeler with that, right? And then just go crease, edge loop partial, and crease that, right? or do a poly group, like just paint a poly group over here and paint another poly group, or do binormals as well. And now go crease PG. So poly groups, actually geometry creasing, crease PG. And now I could bevel that, right? So I could go in and go to crease, and we have a little bevel button, so I can click bevel. Now we have that. And this is sort of like non-destructive. I can change this on the fly. I can change the width on the fly, right? So, but this is dependent on your creasing. So for your example, what I would do is I would actually go to my symmetrical thingy, do this, and then it's not symmetrical. Okay, because this is wrong, probably. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, there's 9, but for some reason it's not symmetrical. Because the mesh itself is not it's not really mirrored. It doesn't matter. So let's crease this edge loop partial. Crease this, crease this, crease this, crease this. I don't care about the poly groups, to be honest. It's just this, right? And then we want to paint these, correct these, and delete hidden. And now you can just bevel based on creasing, and you get the same sort of result. So we could go for something like that, and we get a poly group as well, which is nice, right? So QGrid doesn't give you a poly group. How do you manage subdivisions at this stage? What do you mean? Like, I use dynamic for most of the time, especially now, because I want to preview that thickness for those like little, you know, joint things like that, right? So I could go in and then change this, and I know I'm just changing a low poly version of that. So I could be doing, what I usually do is I have these right now because I beveled them, and now I'm going to delete hidden, and this is the one I'm going to actually apply that thickness, right? So now we have something like this, right? And we can just actually, let's see, yeah, something like this, push this down, and this is what you would get. Turn off post subdivisions, you get something like that, because again we have hollow surfaces thing. So we could do this and do that. And if you're doing a game prop, usually it depends on what type of game you're doing. But if you're doing a very low poly kind of thing, you might want to consider not doing geometry for this. So have a masked material, masked texture, you know, very low resolution mask, and that's it. Everyone in the chat have been inside one of these. Let's hope not. In case I lose symmetry, is it okay to do usable symmetry? Usable symmetry, what do you mean? Oh, right. Okay. So how do I do you're basically asking how does it work? Like how does dynamic subdivisions work? Or what is exactly the question? Like managing subdivisions. So changing the amount of subdivisions it's previewing and stuff like that, right? No. Yeah. Yeah. So dynamic subdivision is a little tab over here under geometry. And you have to think of this as sort of like your preview to your geometry. So let me take a look at another thing. Again, going on tangent again. But if I go over here, let's open up a different cylinder, make Polymesh 3D, and I want to make, like, I don't know, like this cube, and I'm going to split this. I'm going to go in and split this, split unmasked. Going to make this a Boolean just to showcase what I mean. Turn this off, right. So in this case, I have this, right, which is a cylinder, and it has some divisions over there. What, like in this case by default, with 2 smooth subdivisions. So smooth subdivision is basically the same as clicking this divide button with that smooth button turned on, right? So in this case, if I want more, and you can see it's still very low res there, but again, I'm just still on my low poly cage. You can see those little yellow dots. Those are my actual points. I can actually go over here. Uh-oh, wrong keyboard again. I can actually go over here if I do move. you can see I'm only moving that point. You see like the cursor of ZModeler? It's just moving that point. It's just giving me that preview anyway of what it's going to look like, right? So for that, I can raise that smooth subdivision. So this is now 5 times dividing. So that's what you're doing. When you click apply, that's going to divide 5 times with the smooth button turned on, right? And then you obviously want to take care. You could do like flat subdivisions. So in this case, it's going to do 1 flat subdivision and then 5 flat subdivisions, right? And then we could go in and do, let's say, crease edge loop partial. And now this is all creased, right? So now we have a creased edge over there. So now even with my flat subdivisions at 0, in theory, if I crease this, there we go, it's going to give me a crisp edge, right? So if I uncrease this, turn off live booleans because it's conflicting with that. If I uncrease this and I crease this. Now, this is too harsh. So what you would do is you go to the crease menu and lower this crease level to maybe about something like there, right? So crease level 2. You can see the difference over here, right? So this is basically dynamic subdivisions. Now, to that, I can have dynamic thickness, which in essence is adding thickness to that. So it's making it a shell, right? So to showcase that, I'm going to use this cube with live boolean. So I just added some dynamic thickness. In this case, let's do 0.1. And now I'm going to add that cube. I'm going to go to that cube. And I'm going to make this a little bigger. And you can see that it's cutting because it's subtractive cube. So now go back to that cylinder. And if I'm changing that thickness, this is what's happening, right? So, but then the offset is like, does that thickness push the geometry out or in? So in this case, if I push it out, you see like this wall is where the actual geometry is. If I turn it off, you see that? Turn it on, it's right over there. See that? It's that in that location. So it's pushing out. It's creating thickness out from the geometry. If I do the opposite, it's going to push in. Right? And this is something that's super useful if you're doing something for 3D printing. You want to use thickness, a specific measurement or something. You either use this or use Dynamesh Boolean. Right? So this is sort of how the basic stuff. So the segments, in essence, is just how many edge loops you want around that thickness, right? If you do 1, that's like the bare minimum, right? And that's it. This is dynamic geometry. Then you have micro poly as well, which means that you could just let's duplicate this out. And let's bring this to, let's make this a plane. And I want to do, where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. So it's just a plane. Turn off dynamic thickness. And I want to split this. Let's split this to split on mask points. Go over here. And I don't want this to be affected by that, by the subtraction. So I'm going to push this below that. And this could have thickness, but this I don't want to have thickness. This, what I want to do with this is actually go to my, over here, turn down thickness. I want to turn on micro poly, and it's going to replicate geometry around the current geometry that we have. So if I have like, I don't know, herringbone, now I have this, and the more subdivisions I do, the thinner, the smaller that's going to be. And here's something cool. I can just go over here under dynamics and just collision volume, calculate, and then just run a simulation. It's touching that that cube. So what I might want to do is I want to hide this temporarily. Go to dynamics. Run that simulation. Actually, not run the simulation. Recalculate that simulation. Turn this on. And then run the simulation. Now it's going to touch that fake cylinder. Right over there. Now we have a little bit of a piece of cloth for us to work with. Anyone in chat ever seen? Okay. Also, actually one of my dogs to see now. Yeah, so it's basically you have the original geometry, and then as you're creating thickness, that's fake thickness. You want to tell it if it's at 0, that means it's going to go half in and half out. And if it's at 100%, it's just going to go all out. And minus 100% is going to go all in, right? So yeah, So tangent. That was a nice tangent, actually. Thank you for all the questions, guys. This is awesome. I like that. Where is that prop? There you go. So now going back to this, what I want to do, I want to just create a few like very basic cylinders over here. So I'm going to go in, maybe create this ring and rotate it around like 90 degrees. I want to reduce those divisions, but particularly these divisions. I want that thickness for now, so I want to have 4, and then I want to twist this. Where's the twist? Let's go twist, yeah. I want to twist this by 45 degrees. Now we have a little ring, right? And we can change that radius, we can change the scale, and you can see like it's going like a weird thingy. And then we can do the coverage as well. And we can have like half of it. And we could do divide. And we can do, where's the, okay. So we can do like this radius over here and then just scale it down like that. Like that. Like that, right? And now I could array it for sure. I could do that. Or I could just duplicate those, but I am gonna array it because I'm gonna bake one of these, right? And then I don't need to bake any other of these, right? So I'm gonna go in and create a array. And actually before that, I need to split this. Again, separate subtools, and this is gonna have that thickness, but this isn't. So this is going to be locked position, locked size. It's in the middle, right? And I don't want to change that. And I can go in and maybe I want to do like a Y amount of this offset to like over there. And just scale this out. And let me do a transpose one, actually. Let's go transpose line. And I'm going to do this. And I'm gonna move this down here, scale it, rotate it, doesn't matter. And now I want repeats. So actually I want this to go over there, right, like that. And I want 2 repeats. This is actually not ideal for this, but who cares? Actually, let me do 1 repeat. Yeah, just 1. And move it down like that. And then just do this, right? So we could have something like this. That could just be creased. Like so, and just a lot of subdivisions maybe. And then crease level that's a little higher. Oh, there's no, I don't want thickness. Again, this is adding thickness because it inherits everything from the tool palette. All right, so crease level of like 5, maybe 3. There we go. And now I just want to duplicate this. I'm gonna go in, subtool, duplicate, and just move it up like that, and then scale it out. And now I can tweak this to be a little more aligned to what we want, right? Now the benefit of this is that I only need to sculpt once. I only need to sculpt one of these, and it's gonna get to the other one as well. Now our high poly, we want the high poly to have both of those. But the low poly, we want 1, right? We don't need all of these just because you're going to save up UV space, right? And if this is a big prop, you could run into the risk of not being able to pack as many stuff like as you want, right? So in this case, I'm going to model like maybe just model a single cylinder like that. I just prefer to do this, like just splitting this on mass points. Because then it inherits that. So let me just change this to like a cylinder 3D. And no dynamic. It's going like this. maybe going like that and going like this. And then we can just do like this and dynamic and move it out, right? Cool. And then we can have a hook like on the top or something. But for now, that's not the point. So let's do creasing. And there we go. And we have a little cage working. Now you want a piece of drape, a cloth or something on the bottom. Again, just showed you. Like let's do a plane. So I'm gonna insert a plane 3D. And that plane 3D, we can go over here, maybe scale it up. And maybe, you see that geometry? I actually don't like that. So I wanna go like polyplane. And I wanna make this like taller, wider, just a little bit wider. And then I want to start maybe, I don't want as many, I don't want as many of these, like something like that. That's more even, right? And what I want to do is I want to polygroup this. Actually, polygroup this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my dynamics, because this could have UVs. So let's just run some like UVs without polygroups. And there we go. I have one shell. That's perfect. Then we can change that, rotate those shells around to make them fit, you know, the particular texture that we want. Maybe we want this to be like straight, right? So we need to actually, we need to actually make this as straight as possible. We can obviously work on that, but for now, that's not the point. What I want to do is I want to do some drapery, like just drape this around. And for that, I have made this polygroup, so it's easy to select that. So what I'm going to do is I want my dynamics to affect the masked section of this, right? So if I affect the masked section, that means if I move this, it's only moving the unmasked section. But now, since I could use the transpose cloth brush, and now that means I'm moving this one, but the rest is simulating because this is transposed cloth. So it's kind of like a scarf, right? That you're just moving around. I could just do like crazy stuff with this. So anything that's unmasked, that's masked actually, is basically being simulated on. So the transposed cloth is actually affecting the masked section. It's just not moving it completely, right? Like the unmasked section is going to be like just moving, and the masked section is going to be simulating, which is what we want, because we don't care about that top poly group anyway. Can delete it. So at this point, I can just reset this. I can recalculate that collision, and I could just move where I want this to be. Something like this, maybe rotate it around, move it over there. And here's the thing, cool thing, we still have dynamic on. So we could have some dynamic subdivisions over here, and then go under our micro poly just to preview what it's going to look like. Let's go for like a weave or something like that. And now we want some more subdivisions, maybe something like this, something like this. Maybe this weave is not the best example. Do this weave without color. Let me hide that mask so I can see. And let's do this weave actually. This is too, I don't like this. Do something a little more simple. So that weave, and then just add smooth subdivisions like that, right? So now we can also just run that simulation, and wow, why is there floor collision? Floor collision is on. I don't want floor collision, so I'm gonna recalculate that, run that simulation, and then just move this around. As you can see, it's like I'm just moving this piece of cloth around. Now, as I recalculate this, you have to keep in mind that this is looking at the low poly of this. So if I want this to be accurate to collision, I have to apply those dynamic subdivisions. And now recalculate that and just run that simulation. And now obviously this actual geometry is too low. So I can just divide it once, for example, and delete the lower subdivisions, and then run a smooth, basically dynamic subdivisions, and lower this, or something like that. Now the actual geometry that's in a mesh will allow us to run this simulation a little better and a little faster. So let's do recalculate this, and if we move, we have to actually mask something. So let's tap that. That's why I made that poly group, right? And now run that simulation. And now it's a little more accurate, right? You can inflate this a little more, recalculate, run that simulation. You see that? Now it's working. So now I'm just moving this. Maybe I want to rotate this. I want to make it like fall over like that. See that? Something like this. And then just rotate it around, and then push it in, and then just run that simulation. That's a lot of like clipping polygons. Let's rotate the whole thing, and let's do that from over there. So it'd be something like this, something like this. Again, this is particularly useful for characters. If you're doing some sort of like hoodie or something, I would use something like this. I saw a presentation on the ZBrush Summit. I wasn't even working at Maxon a few years ago from a clothing artist at Bungie, and she used dynamics with the ZBrush. Obviously, she did a lot of Marvelous as well, but to get like something quick, this would be perfect. So now with the transposed cloth, I could just move this cloth around. Okay, it's clipping through over there. Let me invert this, and now do that. And we could also just tell it to like maybe inflate a little bit or deflate a little bit, and do like maybe just 0.1. So now it's like deflating, so it's kind of like pushing away from itself in a sense. So it's just a matter of like, you have to experiment, right? So we're going to do this like that, and just run the simulation, and expand as well. We could do like an expand, right? So now the polygons, let me just run that. Yeah, so now the polygons are a little, going a little crazy. But if you keep running the simulation, obviously you can also play around with the firmness. The more the firmness, the bigger the firmness is going to be, less like a silk and more kind of like denim or something. So we go like max firmness, just run this. You can see like it's trying to hold its shape, right? Maybe that's a little too much. Yeah, though, this is because it's expanding. Let's inflate this a little less. Or maybe this doesn't have enough geometry. Let me divide this a couple of times. Recalculate. Also raise the resolution as well. Just raise that resolution. Yeah. It's trying its best. Let's do more simulation iterations. There we go. And now we have a piece of cloth that we could just push this to be like that, right? And then this could be just pushed like that, and then move it up. Over like this, and maybe there's a piece of cloth there, I don't know. And then we can just start cutting this away, so we can go in, for example, and add another subtool. Come on, we can add like a cylinder 3D, and it's going to be subtractive. And where's that cylinder 3D? This cylinder 3D could be over here. I'm going to squeeze that in and squeeze that even more. Now what we can do effectively is just start using this to just, whoops, that's the wrong way. So you'd have like something like this, right? Or you could start cutting away that shape. Actually, I want this to be more like this. Or you can make an IMM that just does these Boolean cuts, right? Like that. and then like this, and it's kind of like making these little cuts in your drapery, right? Let me see if I can make this work. Maybe something like this, and then do maybe reverse this to be something like that, and then just copy a bunch of them. And we have like this weird shape that would be like a cut, right? But again, this would be something that you would do in Designer or Substance Painter when you're texturing, right? Even like the little like herringbone like thing, weave thing, you would just do that in Designer or Substance if you're doing a game prop, right? Yeah, the cages and Dark Souls. Ooh, that's cool. I wasn't looking at that, to be honest. But yeah, so now that we have this, let me just delete that one. Delete hidden. And now just run the simulation instead of on masked, on brushed. Let's see how that works. And let's actually mask this section off. Run that simulation. And unmask this. Run that simulation. And there we go. And then let's do that same thing over here. There we go. And we have a piece of drapery over there. Not very cool, I don't know. Looks weird, but there you go. So we have this, and this is sort of how I did that for the other cage, like that one. Obviously, I took a little bit more time doing this. And obviously we have like stuff like these pieces, which are basically extrudes out of that Q grid with thickness, right? They're basically just extruding out. And then we have some live booleans working for us, because this is sort of like, this is basically, we have this as well, like a piece of drapery just going over that, right? We can just start drawing holes or whatever in a mass material. And then we have, this was like the original design for that, and this little thing over here. This could be an IMM. Again, if you want to do like multiple variations of this, just create an IMM with repeating pieces of those cages. Make sure you have like a low poly version of that, and that they share the same UVs. That's important. Yep. All right, so that was a very uneventful one, just because we did a lot of questions and a lot of demos in the beginning. This wasn't a more of a prop stream, it was more a Q&A, which I'm happy to do, right? Anytime. But yeah. Any other questions from anyone? I'm gonna start adding audio bites here with the crickets. That's not a cricket, sorry. Any other questions from anyone? If not, we're gonna wrap this up. It's gonna be a quick one. No other questions. So with that, I am out of the stream today. That was a Q&A session. I'm Rodolfo Silva. I'm with Maxon, ZBrush trainer. And I hope to see you guys soon on the next week's stream on Create with Maxon with high-end game assets. We're going to do effects assets. So like decals, like atlases for like banners and horizontal banners, vertical banners. Assets that could be baked as sort of like emissive assets to make like a fireplace or a fire pit or a campfire or anything. So I hope you guys join us for that. And this was very fun. Thank you so much for every single question, you guys. You guys are awesome. And I'll see you in a little while. Bye. Bye.